I love when I'm sitting having a conversation, or I guess standing or anything else, having a conversation with the leader, and you can almost hear the ball bearings in their head drop into place. And there's a look that we all get when we have an aha moment. And that look is the moment I live for. So it can happen in a large group. It can happen one-on-one. When you see organization, when people stay after a class in Zoom, for example, even in Zoom or in a regular class, and to ask questions, to want to go deeper, to do their own research. All of those things mean that you're supporting a mindset shift. Boy, don't say that 3 times fast. A shift in the mindset, and that's what it is. That's what it is. Because if you change the mindset of one leader, you're changing. You're probably improving the lives of everybody that reports to them. So it's, yeah, one person can be all it takes.
My next guest brings her passion for human-centered design into her work with leaders and organizations. She's a skilled facilitator and speaker, as well as a coach and consultant to top leaders. Dr. Lucia Murphy's practice strives to deliver sustainable leadership by bringing her knowledge and inspiration from the intersection of science and art.
You are watching Profunda TV with host Phyllis Haynes.
Lucia, it is a pleasure to see you. Really great to see you. You do some really interesting work. And, I know you work with leaders. You have a special project that you do with leaders. I heard it's called shadowing. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yes, I do. Sometimes when we're leading, we think we're doing one thing and we're actually doing something else. And so what I do is I go in and I literally follow a leader in across their day, him or her or them, and not only watch what they're saying with their body, but also watch the body language and the way that their message is being received or not by the people that they're leading. So it's incredibly, it's always surprising the first time somebody goes through something like that, because we all send out all kinds of signals that most of us don't really think about. And so that turns out to be a really important piece of information. And then they can make decisions about whether the message that they're sending is aligned to their values and all the deeper work. But it's kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, and I bet you missed it during the pandemic, right?
Yeah. You know what? I missed a lot of things in the pandemic. I am an outgoing person. And something about the Zoom, the little tiny boxes was a little bit tough. Went out and learned a bunch of tools, to sort of have some of the conversations. But boy, I cannot wait to get a great big hug from you, from my clients. I am a very much that way outgoing and a touchy person. So yeah, that'll be nice. That'll be really nice. And to have a group of people in a room that's not the size of a warehouse, and with my face on a jumbotron, something about that's really disorienting.
I got it. You want to be in touch with your clients. So now, in preparing for this, you mentioned to me something very interesting, an observation that we share, that racial issues, diversity and inclusion are really key. What's your thinking about that in terms of leaders?
Well, I think what's happened, we have, as in leadership training, we have talked about biases and the way that biases make us make suboptimal decisions. That's not anything new. But what we're finding now is that now leaders are ready to look at their assumptions about the people that they work with, the people that they're inadvertently keeping out of the conversation, and the impact that that has on the profitability, the innovation of their companies. So it's a long overdue conversation, but it is exciting because it's for the first time we can call things what they are. We used to, candy coat stuff. Oh, it's assumptions, it's preconceived notions, and now we just say, yeah, that's a nice chunk of implicit bias there, my friend. So,
right. Well, now you also made another observation, and I just want to bring you to that. I also did, as you know, diversity and inclusion work. And you mentioned something that I remember, that often organizations had two departments way over separated from the leaders. Is that changing in your view?
the good leaders are bringing them back together. So the work of bias and getting rid of bias used to be in the corner in the HR section of the company. And they were the ones that were in charge of, oh, somebody said something, or microaggressions, or inconsistent policy applications. But now it can no longer stay there. Leaders are recognizing their personal responsibility and to get that out of their own thinking, change their own mindset so that they don't have to wait for the HR person to come and wag a finger at them. We're moving away from just compliance and embracing this notion that different perspectives, different people, different ideas in the same conversation will change the way we look at problems, and we will solve them differently. Absolutely. So leaders are taking more ownership. And some of that, interestingly, I believe that the pandemic has made it clear that old ways of doing things probably aren't going to come back the way they were before. So to keep moving forward, leaders are having to get personally involved in a lot more decisions to keep their people safe, but also just to think about how the market's changing, how the world is changing, and how sometimes their expertise, the old ways of doing things, how that's actually going to not be good. It's going to bite them in the butt. The old ways of doing things have to be relooked at.
So, given that all this change has occurred, I guess you're working with people to make change. Are there people who are resistant to change, and how do you work through that?
Good question. That's a great question. I think people have always been resistant to change. I think the human is an animal that likes to know that things are going to be the same, and some of our personalities are more that way than others. One of the things I believe in a systematic approach to change, which means looking at awareness. Okay, so does somebody even understand what kind of change is happening? Do they have a desire? Is there a need for giving them knowledge and an opportunity to apply this? And then once we have change, do we reinforce that to keep people from going back to the old way? I think a systematic approach is really the way to go, because it looks at the people side of change. It's not just a change of policy or turning the world upside down, but rather helping people make the change. In part, I mean, by looking at what would happen if you didn't change. So that's the best way to do it, is to put the human back in the change management process.
So what part of this work makes you get up in the morning? What aspect of this is satisfying?
I all of it, and that's not the right answer, but I love when I'm sitting having a conversation, or I guess standing or anything else, having a conversation with the leader, and you can almost hear the ball bearings in their head drop into place, and there's a look that we all get when we have an aha moment, and that look is the moment I live for. So it can happen in a large group, it can happen one-on-one. When you see organization, when people stay after a class in Zoom, for example, even in Zoom or in a regular class, and to ask questions, to want to go deeper, to do their own research, all of those things mean that you're supporting a mindset shift. Boy, don't say that 3 times fast. A shift in the mindset, and that's what it is. That's what it is. Because if you change the mindset of one leader, you're changing. You're probably improving the lives of everybody that reports to them. So it's, yeah, one person can be all it takes.
Well, now it seems also what's interesting about you, I gather you're not 6'4" and 42 long, which is the traditional model of the CEO. Have things changed for women who do consulting and coaching? Do you find a different kind of reception, or do you still have to work through perceptions when you start to work with a client?
I feel I do sometimes still have to work through perceptions. I believe that I've been told that I sound a lot taller than I am. I'm a towering 5'3". And so when I walk into the room, sometimes people are surprised. But I guess I honestly carry myself like I'm a 42 long, perhaps. And I have literally gone toe to toe with someone. I mean, like toe of the shoe against toe of the shoe. And to be able to stand there confidently and say, yeah, you need to take a step back. This is not about you as an individual. This is about what's best for your people. Take a step back, catch your breath. Let's all start over again. And that, it doesn't take many of those before your reputation gets out. Yeah. So and I do it with love.
Doing it with love is very clear that comes from you. So you also work in areas of racial justice.
I do.
And I gather this is from the heart for you. Can you talk a little bit about that work?
Yes, for me, the trigger was one of my daughter's friends was they were both turning 16, and my daughter's friend is Black, and the mother and I were talking, and she said yes, we had to have the conversation with the daughter's name about, we had to have the talk, and I'm thinking, the talk, what? And she said, yeah, we had to tell her how to act when she gets pulled over because she's Black. It was such a shock. It's not something that I had ever thought about before. And I thought there's a whole thing going on here that I really have not been paying attention to, and I need to. So following that, I went out and got certified in facilitation for this kind of thing. I do a lot of work around implicit bias and inclusion. Really, that's where a lot of people are starting. So I find it very satisfying when a leader changes her or his or their mind and starts doing things differently so that their people feel supported and can bring 100% of themselves to work. That's wonderful. That's satisfying for me.
What are some of the obstacles, though, that you run into doing the facilitation? I have many friends, Black and white, who are feeling sometimes they get beat up in the conversation in the efforts to find equilibrium on the race issue. What happens for you and what's your experience there?
It yes, it is that. No one goes into this work thinking you're going to make friends out of everybody. And that's just one of the realities. Some of it is exhausting. We talked earlier about change. It's hard to realize that your thinking could be hurting somebody. And that's a difficult realization. People will resist it. It's hard. Those are hard conversations. They're important conversations. They're conversations we need to have. Again, if nothing else, because the assumptions that we make and the predispositions and the biases and all the things that keep us from seeing what actually is going on in front of us, keep us from making the best decisions we can. So I usually, I do persist. If I can get one mind to shift and then give, my tactic is if I can get a room full of people and I get half a dozen people to shift, I hand them the marker and have them then support this, and slowly we normalize these conversations, and we start realizing that we have to have them. They're difficult, but they're not scary. We're all going to make mistakes. We have to start with the assumption of good intention, and then build from that.
So what does the world look like? Let's just say, there was a genie listening to our conversation, and we could have a world that, really shifted in the right direction. What would it look like from your end? I know from my end, it would be certainly more conscientious police officers learning how to deal with the community. But in addition to that, what would the world look like?
I think this is going to sound really basic, but we would be, again, speaking with each other, connecting with each other as a human to human. We've gotten away from that. We've gotten really good, and I call it label and dismiss. That's not it could be any label, but if I can put you in a category and just say, yeah, done with that, I don't have to talk to you anymore. I know all about you. And we're seeing, there's a lot of it. I think the perfect world would be one where we're worried about the environment. Today, we can't go on making decisions as if everything is going to last forever, because it's not. And we would be equally conservationalist with each other's humanity. We would speak with discernment. We would speak with compassion, and we would allow somebody to share their story with us without stopping them and filling in the blanks for them, or reinterpreting what we think their story should be. So it would be a softer world, maybe. It would things would certainly be going faster, because we would not be making as many mistakes, I think.
We wouldn't be slowed up by unnecessary conflict in this area in any event. I guess for me, I would like to see education catch up with our times in a way that it was understood that people are supposed to keep learning, and that children are learning not only to have the basic reading, writing, and arithmetic, but that they are being prepared for being good citizens and participants in the world. And that education needs to get modernized a little bit, but I think there are people working towards that. But I do think that our world is going to wake up, that the pandemic in a way was a wake up call. anything you want to add that what are your dreams like? What do you want to add to this?
Well, I got to tell you, I love your vision of the education. One of the things I was reading about a number of very famous people in the past, historic people, and one of the things that they all had in common is they loved to read. I think the idea of us as adults taking on a learner's mindset is beautiful. Moving away, or not moving away, creating space for expertise, yes, but also to have some real honest conversations about what are my assumptions and what do I have to stop and relearn? What do I have to unlearn? What am I doing that I need to unlearn and reassess and evaluate differently? To do that means learning. I mean, if you think about it, learning means you're going to make mistakes, which means that we all need to put on a growth mindset, be willing to make mistakes, be willing to learn something different, be willing to say, yeah, that worked for me before, but I'm ready to do something different. So I'm building on what you said. That's lifelong learners. I think that would be fabulous.
Right, and where you and I might parse a little bit of, I'm into sci-fi. People who watch me know that, but I think learning is meant to be holographic in a sense. That I think reading is powerful, but reading is only one way of learning. And I think that obviously we learn by reading and watching and modeling behavior. Years ago, Lucia, I know this is a little story and aside.
That's great.
I was at a convention and was just waiting. There's a lot of waiting at conferences. And, I was supposed to facilitate an area, but I was waiting for my turn. And literally, a bag lady sits down next to me. And she starts talking to me about all these things, but I decided not to pull away. I decided to listen. And she talked about vector analysis and a whole bunch of things. But she said something that was so simple. She said, why do we give children little teacup sets or toy kitchen utensils and they aren't labeled? If you want them to read, why doesn't the cup say cup? Why doesn't the spoon say spoons? Why not start with that? Now, that was just a small question, but it stayed with me forever. And I think there are many things like that that we assume people ought to learn through osmosis or over time, where we can really reevaluate how do we learn what we learn. Yeah. And I think ending racism can also be that. Our media, our interaction with customer service, our understanding of what the internet will be really used for will help us end the crisis that we're in with racial divides.
Yes, and I think as we start emerging, as we emerge from 2020 and beyond, we have an incredible opportunity to really pay attention to the experiences that we're going through. I mean, our lives had been on hold for whatever period of time, and to just get totally present and actually live it. I think that is a learning thing. That's a dynamic thing. It's a leadership thing. It's a racial thing. All of us have an opportunity to really just fully engage in what is.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to talking with you again. People will be able to reach out to you, and I invite you to come back on the program. So thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, Phyllis.